Hello everybody, this is Joel. Today I'm going to be talking about instructions and in particular focusing on imperative verbs, imperative sentences and imperative mood. So I know that that can be a little bit confusing because they're all called imperative, and you'll see from this video that they are all similar, but there are some key differences when explaining each of those items. So let's get into it. So the imperative verb is used when writing instructions, commands, directions, or orders. You can use it in recipes, for medicine directions, map directions, requests, advice or guidance, suggestions, warnings. You can also use it in invitations or to state a desire or wish. For example, please let me go to the party. Maybe that's a child asking their parents. That's or have a nice day. You can ask or use the imperative positively or negatively, but you should be careful when using them because some people can take offense. It can sound like you're ordering them around. People don't like to be ordered around or bossed around, and so they might say, "Hey, don't talk to me like I'm a dog," or something like that, because they think that you're ordering them around. Often, people will use this, like obviously when you're doing instructions or directions, you, that's an acceptable time or context to use those uh, forms, but uh, you wouldn't be running around outside ordering people around. People might get upset. So let's just talk about this simple imperative sentence. So it uses the base form of a verb and there's usually no subject. So when the subject you is implied, you can be used in singular and plural, and it's the second person. So the sentence is written in the second person. It, and you might use it with something like write this down for a command or a direction, turn left, a recipe, crack 2 eggs, a request, sit down please. Now you can make this more polite by adding the please, and you can add please to the start of the sentence and the finish of the sentence. Both of them have the same meaning and can be used in the same context. However, you might make the argument that please sit down is slightly more polite than sit down please, because please sit down has the please at the start, so it opens with the politeness, whereas sit down please finishes with the please. So you're sort of like giving the order, then adding the politeness. You could make a good case to argue that please sit down is more polite than sit down please. But I would also argue that it depends on your tone of voice. So, for example, sit down please is maybe more polite than please sit down, so it's all about your tone of voice. You can also use it for advice. And here's an example of a negative with don't. So don't go in the pool yet. All right. For warnings, you can use the imperative stay fire safe. Right? Do not enter. Swim between the red and yellow flags. You probably have seen many warnings like this. Surfcraft prohibited between the red and yellow flags. So you can see where that tense is used. Invitations. So you can use it. These are, when I was researching this, these are all from invitations I saw online. So do come. Eat pizza and play video games to celebrate Tom's 10th birthday. Slip into your disco gear and dance. Be there or be square. Be there or be square is a very common sort of idiom. It just means come to the party or be boring sort of thing, and starts at 10 a.m. So these are invitations. There's two types of command. We've mainly been talking about the you command, which has this implied subject of you. Sit down, don't sit there, right? So you can add the you if you want to be specific. So you sit down. Maybe you're talking to a group, and maybe that one person is not listening to you. So it's like you sit down. You're drawing their attention that you mean them. All right. The other type of command is the we command. So it's as a way of being a bit polite. So you're making a suggestion that we should do or should not do something together. And we use let's. Now, let's, the abbreviation of let us. Okay? So we're talking about us and we're using that we, right? So we're doing something together. So let's sit down for a bit, right? I'm tired or it's a lovely day. Let's sit down for a bit, you know? Let's talk about it. There's a problem. Let's talk about it. Or, let's not see a movie. Let's go to the park instead. All right. So that's examples of using the let's with the imperative. However, we can also use the let's as a polite way of giving a command. So imagine you've got lots of kids in your house. They're all playing in another room, but they're sort of making a lot of noise. You've got a headache, so you're walking there and say, "Hey guys, let's keep the noise down in there." Right? Let's keep the noise down. So you're not making any noise, right? You've got a headache. You want them to be quiet. You're telling them to be quiet. Let's keep the noise down in there, right? So you're saying let's, but you mean them, right? And that's very specific. That's the way that you can use let's to make a command more polite. As I've sort of touched on, there are types of imperatives. There's positive, which has the base form of the verb, the implied subject of you. You can add a name or a pronoun for emphasis, but it's not necessary. So, Bob, don't walk in the kitchen, right? That's an example of a negative. Okay, so with the negative, you add that don't. So, Bob, walk in the kitchen. You're telling him to walk in the kitchen. Bob, don't walk in the kitchen. You're saying not. So that's with the do not or don't. That's the negative, right? And that goes at the start. Here's something interesting though, because we're adding this extra information, right? So there's like, Bob, don't walk into the kitchen. You're telling Bob not to do something, all right? But by adding this, the floors are wet. We're appealing to Bob's logic. We're not telling you not to walk in the kitchen because we just want to tell you what to do. The floors are wet. We don't want you to slip over and get hurt. We don't want you to walk mud through the kitchen with our nice clean floors. So we're appealing to Bob's logic or better nature. Here's the reason why we're telling you to not walk in the kitchen. And that's another way of making imperatives sound a bit more polite by adding extra information to explain the reason why you are giving that command. So for those of you who'd like some writing practice, I think a good way to practice your imperatives is to write a to-do list. Here's an example of some to-do list things. Lists are great so that you could do a master to-do list or a wish list. Shopping list does not fall into this category, but the other ones do. And of course, there's the bucket list. So a bucket list is a list of things that you would like to do before you die. Now I know that I don't want to upset anybody, but it's sort of a thing like, oh, I want to write a book, or oh, I want to climb Everest, or I want to go see Angkor Wat, or something like that. So these are just it's bucket list is can be a fun thing to do to sort of organize your life and maybe your holidays in the in the future. The to-do list I find very useful. I do it all of the time, especially in my holidays and things. I make lists of chores and work that I want to get done around the house, and so it can be a good um, activity. And of course, right now you might want to make a to-do list of your homework and assessment. So have a think about that and have a verb moods. So this is the other thing. So talk about verb moods, and we're talking about the imperative. So I'll clean your room today, and look at this exclamation mark. So the verb, while the imperative sentence structure uses a full stop, the imperative mood can use a exclamation mark or a full stop, and so you need to kind of think about that. If there's a difference between "watch out" as an imperative sentence and "holy cow" as a different kind of sentence. So in those cases, you for the imperative mood, you could use an exclamation, but the imperative sentence structure only uses a full stop. I know that's a little bit confusing. I didn't make up those terms. There's a lot of things that use this imperative word to describe them. Just bear that in mind. And that when you see an exclamation mark, you have to decide whether it is a used as an exclamation like for emotion, in which case it's not an imperative, or if it's used for emphasizing a command, in which case it is an imperative. Okay, so then we have punctuation, as I've touched on. We have the full stops or periods. So preheat the oven. Don't eat all of the cookies, right? These are requests and demand. Stop feeding the dog from the table. Okay. We have this please join us for dinner. And we have this exclamation mark. Give me that. Don't go outside. So that's the difference with these are imperative mood, right? These are imperative mood plus imperative sentence structure. So just touching on that kinds of sentences, I'm talking about sentence structure. We're looking at this imperative or command gives orders, right? So the declarative is something like grammar is essential for academic writing. Imperative, get out your pencil. Interrogative, did you do your homework? Exclamatory, watch out. So this is what I'm talking about here. We've got this here, okay? Um, that's an exclamatory sentence, right? So it's different than when we're talking about sentence structure, then we're talking about mood. Here's some basic forms of the instructions. We covered that in 3P. When you write instructions, you should make sure you do these things, all right? And then as a practice, I thought you practice telling each other how to make a cup of coffee or your favorite sandwich or a cup of tea. And that's something we can do in the tutorial time. Here's my references. All right. I hope you've enjoyed this video. I know that there's a lot in here. I think it was good to dig deeply into this mood and sentence structure, and I'll probably do more about that later. So thanks for listening, and see you next time.